welcome to another episode of Exit Rich. So, I'm very excited today. I know you hear me say that all the time, but we have a really special guest on a subject that we really haven't brought to the Exit Rich podcast, and we really haven't, talked much about it. And I think it's a subject that really demands a lot of attention, a lot of focus, and people need to pay attention. So, get ready to listen to Miss Netta Jenkins. She is the CFO of Aerospace. Did I get that right?
Nope, CEO of Aerodye.
Aerospace. Now you're gonna remember it even more. So when I mess up, you'll remember it more. So the CEO of Aerospace. So let me tell you a little bit about her background. She's got about a five-page bio, but I'm reading the short version. So Netta Jenkins, again, CEO of Aerospace, a gamified platform for organizations that ignite DEI efforts, DI efforts. Explain what that is real quick.
Yeah, so D is for diversity, E is for equity, and I is for inclusion, stands for DEI.
All right. So, efforts by measuring the impact of every employee and officer's real time demographic data. Aerody's platform organically enhances representation, retention, growth, and engagement. Everyone's having a hard time really getting and keeping employees. So I think this is a huge subject to bring in front of our business owners and all of our listeners. Netta is a doctoral student focused on quality systems and management, as well as an author of the Inclusive Organization. The Inclusive Organization, I heard that. I'm like, isn't there already a book out there called The Inclusive Organization? But I guess there's not. So anyway, listen to this, folks. It launches. When does it launch?
It launches in June.
In June.
Yeah, right in the beginning of June.
So we're going to talk all about her book today, and I want everybody that's listening to this podcast go purchase her book. Tell me you did, and then we'll have some type of bonus for you from Salo Tucker Incorporated. All right. So listed by Forbes as one of the top four DI books to read. Wow, that's impressive. Steve Forbes also gave a glowing recommendation and endorsement on my book, Exit Rich, as well. So we have that in common.
That's awesome.
So Netta has been advising corporations and audiences of all kinds for over 15 years on the most effective. You don't look old enough to do 15 years, but okay.
Ageism, I'm calling it.
I'm going backwards. I'm doing less and less candles on my. So anyway, she's been advising corporations and audiences for over 15 years on the most effective strategies to address these huge gaps. We all know it. Let's not ignore it, right? What are these gaps, Netta, that we're having?
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of inequities that exist, oftentimes, and we were just talking about it, right? Many people don't know the definition of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And so oftentimes I'd like to break that down, especially within the workplace. And I'll break that down for your viewers today. Diversity in the workplace, that's the equal representation of different identities and experiences on teams that offer, and this is the critical part, that offer psychological safety, advancement, and successful solutions, right? Within organizations, we want for every single employee to be able to advance. When there are barriers that exist, it makes it that much harder for one to grow within their own career. Equity within the workplace is very interesting. It's the effective organizational process and structure that provide people of all levels, the access and support to participate, communicate, contribute, and grow. So for me, it was really critical to really define each of these terms, especially as it pertains to the workplace, so that people can start to really apply it to the work that they do. The way that I describe equity is like, let's say you're in the engineering department, you're an engineer. Mm-hmm. There's a broken process and you're working maybe with the product team, but there's an organizational broken process. That's going to make it very hard for you to do your work, right? It's not equitable, that process. So we have to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion holistically. The last piece is inclusion. Inclusion in the workplace is the ability to share wisdom and power through privilege for the success of all, right? And so we as human beings, we all hold some level of privilege, right? So for me, when I identify my privilege within the workplace, it's okay, I'm on a VP level, right? I have many different opportunities and jobs that I'm in, but for the fintech organization that I work for, I'm VP there. And so I have direct reports. So, me being at that level, I'm able to provide not only mentorship, sponsorship, I'm able to advocate for my direct reports when they're in the room and when they're not in the room with me. I'm
Mhm.
able to also guide them through their career and ensuring that they are able to advance, that they have the resources, that they have the tools to do that. So there's a level of privilege even just based on the level that I'm at within the organization, right?
Mhm.
There's privilege from a gender perspective. There's privilege from a race and ethnicity perspective, right? So it's really critical that we identify that and then say, okay, well, I hold this privilege. How can I share that wisdom with someone else? How can I support them to ensure that they are able to elevate as well because they don't have this privilege? It's
Mhm.
very simple concept.
Mhm. It's a very simple concept that most, honestly, a lot of people, not just entrepreneurs, really don't pay attention to. Business owners,
Yeah,
management teams don't pay attention to.
yeah,
It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like in the trunk of your car, right? You know it's there, but you're not going to until you really need something from
yeah. And it's unfortunate, right? Because when we think about the
it. It is
workplace,
unfortunate.
who's in the workplace? People, humans, right? With
All kinds of people, all
all
types of
types of people from all walks of life, different backgrounds, different experiences. So it's a mess when an organization or a leader doesn't stop and say, okay, how can I ensure that one, the people that are reporting to me are equipped with the tool and the resources that they need? And that may mean that one person has this resource, but the next person may need a little bit more,
yeah,
right? Of tools and resources. So, how are we making sure that people have those resources so that they can advance? And
right.
what DEI solves for within organizations is essentially just saying there are inequities, there are barriers that exist. How do we remove those barriers so that everyone is able to excel?
Mhm.
But it goes back to what you're saying. Oftentimes people think, that's not needed, right? We can get by.
Oh, I don't have that problem.
I've never had that
Yeah.
problem. And it's like, no, 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 you do have that problem because
Mhm.
also there's so many studies that show when there is diversity, right? When there is that collaboration within organizations, you see higher productivity, you see higher profitability, right? So there are organizations that are really thriving, but it's because they're fostering a psychological safe space for their employees.
Mm.
There are organizations that are not thriving as much. You go and read their reviews online and you're like, ah, and what's the one thing you see? You're not treated well. You don't have the benefits. You don't have this and that. And it goes right back to the core of how, and who are you treating, the right way, of course.
Yeah, and I've always found those comments and reviews because I'm an entrepreneur. I own many different companies. And
Mhm.
I've always found those reviews as kind of unfair. And the reason I say that is because anybody can go on there and make a comment, and many of them are accurate, right? I think there's validity to many of them, but there's also many of them where they got terminated for cause,
Mhm.
they didn't get a promotion, maybe they had to get phased out, and they just go on there and blast their former company, they blast their former employer or employees because they got upset with something. And
Yeah.
employers can't really respond because if they do, then they're being defensive and then they're being this and being that. So you got to go on and say, oh, I'm so sorry you feel that way, and da da da. When really, it should be a two-way street
Mhm.
where employees can voice their opinion and their experience, but employers can come in and defend themselves too, because
Yeah.
that can really hurt companies in the long run with recruiting, more companies with vendors, with getting business, etc. So
Yeah.
I have always thought that needs to be more of a two-way fair street where employers have the right to make factual comments too. But
Yeah. So
employees can't because they're not at risk,
yeah,
for
yeah.
kids and everything else.
Yeah, no, that you raise a good point. There are, opportunities though for organizations to share. Hey, here are our benefits. Here how we impact employees. So I think, of course, if they wanted to respond to some of those folks that are sharing the negative feedback, and you're right, people leave an organization, they didn't have a good experience, they're going to share. But we really have to think about this logically. Oftentimes I think, okay, whenever I write a review, it is truly because I had a bad experience, right? You typically don't think, oh my gosh, I had this great experience, now I have to write a review.
Yeah, and
It's
I believe that's true
to
with,
share with other people.
businesses we do business with, that we shop with, that we go to
Yeah,
restaurants. I believe it's true
yeah,
for all that. But I also think that employees have a warped sense of reality sometimes when it comes to doing their job, when it comes to doing quality work, when it comes to doing this or that. So the minute that they get reprimanded for that, or or written up for that or something, and maybe even terminated because of that, then they want to go out there and blast the employer. Look, I know because it happens a lot with my clients, and
yeah,
we
yeah,
have to do damage control with them and try to get their business back on track. So
yeah.
there's got
I
to
mean,
be a fair approach to that.
yeah, definitely. I believe in the power of numbers. So if I see that there is a long list of negative reviews as opposed to positive, then something's off there.
Oh
What's
yeah,
if
if
there
there's a couple, yeah.
yeah, if there's a particular trend, I go back to the data. Data doesn't lie, right? So if there's a particular trend that keeps on coming up, then one would have to logically look at it and say, okay, well, what's really happening here? And of course, we know, like we were saying before, there are going to be those people all the time. If they are not having the best experience, or maybe they got fired or laid off or whatever, they're going to go on there and maybe
Well, I
say,
have a
"Hey, look,"
perfect
right?
example. I have a perfect example. We sold a
Yeah.
company, new management came in there. Old management was still there. They bought a percentage of the company. Old management retained, I'd want to say 20-30% equity. And they just blasted the owner, the existing owner, and just really, really, really went after him because they felt like he made a terrible decision. They hate the new person he bought in, and it just got really out of control. Now there's a lawsuit, etc. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think
and the
that,
owner and the previous owner they loved. They
yeah.
loved him. He
And I
was
think,
a dream, and that's one of the reasons that the buyer bought the company.
yeah. And I think organizations, that's why they have marketing and PR firms, right? Or
Yeah, but when we're
people,
talking, and I think if you're
they have to own their narrative as well. If that's their story, they should be leaning on who that PR person is to say, like, hey, here's what's happening, within our organization. Here's the steps that we're taking, so that they do own the narrative.
yeah, you just got to be very careful because if the sale's not public and it's private, it's
Yeah,
very difficult sometimes to
right.
disclose that a sale happened, especially depending upon all the contingencies, the reps and warranties, fallbacks, everything that happens
Yeah.
in a transaction. So it's very difficult to control that narrative sometimes. Now
Yeah.
you keep mentioning organizations.
Mhm.
So equity, it's not just big organizations, it's all businesses of all types
Oh,
and all sizes. So even a small
oh,
business that has a few employees, this
yeah.
affects that small business as well, right?
Absolutely. You have people in it. At the end of the day, we're humans. I think, back in the day, it was easy because many of us were covering, right? We were covering who we were. We had the home person, and then we had the work person. And now more people are saying, hey, I want to be authentic in my own way, not come into the office, or doing whatever the heck you want to do. But people are saying, hey, I'm tired of masking who I am. I
Mhm.
want to be who I am all the time.
Mhm.
And so there's this opening for that. And you're right about that. No matter the size of an organization, even if there are just two people, really fostering a psychologically safe environment, preparing individuals, educating them on these topics like we're talking about today, diversity, equity, and inclusion, are so important.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. So let's get in. Well, first, before we dive into your book, let's talk about a little bit about you as a child. What were you like as a child? And how did you get into this?
Yeah.
I don't know if somebody wakes up one day and say, "Oh, I'm going to do diversity," equity and inclusion or
Right, yeah.
small businesses.
You know, it's funny because I definitely didn't wake up saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do this." You asked a good question. How was I like as a child? I was a very interesting child. I was searching for dinosaur fossils. I really truly believe that there was a dinosaur in my neighborhood. So I would I would take my neighborhood friends, and that's when I knew I had like definitely there was a leadership experience that I had bringing all of my young friends and as we search for dinosaur fossils, riding around my neighborhood until night, and my mom is screaming my name to come in. So I was definitely a child that loved people, and I still do. I say loved because sometimes as you get
You
older,
know,
it gets harder. It's like, but I was also a young person that loved to explore and loved to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and so both of my parents are from Liberia, and having immigrant parents, they stress the importance of education. So there were three things that I could become in life. It's a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And in fact, when I was very young, my mother started to purchase cardiovascular surgeon books for me to read. I had to start reading that. And my father was just like, no, she's going to be an attorney. And so he buys me a bunch of law books. And so summer breaks, I'm literally reading, I'm reading doctorate level books. And I'm like, I don't understand this. Oh my goodness. But
you were reading law books?
I was reading law books. I was reading
Is your
cardiovascular.
dad a lawyer?
He's not. He was a police officer. Yeah. But, and my mother was a nurse, but it's just really the immigrant mentality. It's either doctor, lawyer, engineer. So they prepare you at a very young age. And so, you know, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. We were the only Black family at that time. And so we had experienced a tremendous amount of overt racism. There was one experience that I had where I was 7 years old and a white woman walked up to my mother and I while we're in our yard and said, Blacks don't belong in my neighborhood. And she spit in my mother's face.
Oh my God.
And I remember being 7 years old. I stood next to my mother and I literally felt her energy. I felt her thinking, like, what do I do? Do I react in the way that I want to react? We all know what that means. Do I turn around and just grab my daughter's hand? Do I scream? Right. So I felt all of this
Did she have
energy.
a water hose? Because I would have used a water
I
hose.
listen, I know something, right? Something. I'm like, oh, what would I have done? But in that moment, she took my hand and we just turned around and we walked back in the house that day. And we didn't unpack. And I remember going to my room and I got on my knees, I prayed, and then I vowed to never be silent again because I was silent in that moment. I was only 7 years old. And so I had another incident where I was in school and a little boy, little white boy, while I was in middle school said, I heard your family's from Africa. Let me see how far and fast you can climb up this tree. And he said it while other, young people were around. And I went back home that day and I was crying. My mother looked at me and she said, and she has such wise words. She said, Netta, I didn't bring you in this world to cry about things. I brought you in this world to create change. And that is the day I looked at my mom and I was like, oh, she's crazy. She thinks I'm Martin Luther King. I'm not.
Or Les Brown.
Someone, right? Some incredible, influential civil rights leader. And it
I
was
heard
that
he was
moment
not civil
where,
rights, but let me tell you, from where he came from, he sure came a long way.
yeah, definitely. And it was that moment where um, it was my mom then giving me the power to create my own story and fight and advocate for myself and for others. And that's what I started to do. I went back, became president of the freshman class, and I started to advocate. I took all honors courses. I wanted to understand what was happening, what was being shared, because education is so critical. I was challenging teachers. They did not care for that, right? It's like, oh, you have Netta. Oh, great. Um, and that's how it started. It was me doing that and not even knowing that I'm really focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I of course, went on to college and focused on communications and behavioral psychology. And I still did the same thing, just naturally always advocating and fighting for
Wait
people.
a
And
minute,
then
you didn't go to law school to be a civil
I
rights attorney?
didn't go into law school. I thought I was going to be an attorney, but it was a no-no for me. Um, and yeah, and then I landed in the workplace and I started to, it was clear the many inequities that existed, the pay gap and pay inequities that existed for women and people of color, and then
Even in the pay gap within the same, doing the same job, right? Doing the
doing the same
exact same
job.
job, same industry, the
Doing
same
the
task,
same job.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or just, and even watching people, right, be in the same role, wanting to move up, doing well, scoring very high from a performance evaluation perspective, but never then being promoted. And then you start to see the trend. You start to see that, hey, less people from marginalized groups are being promoted here. Why is that? Right? Especially
And
for those.
are you really kind of referring to the larger organizations, or are you referring to small businesses too that maybe you had some experience in?
I would say all. Once you have employees, within your organization,
Even
it's
if it's just three employees, five employees. Okay.
well, even if it's just three or five employees, you want to then foster and make sure that it's an inclusive, psychologically safe organization for people to grow and advance. I mean, like that's a critical time to start implementing tools
Yeah.
that and hiring the right people that'll come in and have that mindset of no, we want to foster an inclusive workplace here. We want people to advance and grow. We don't want to create barriers
Mhm.
for each other. It's oftentimes what I see even for a smaller business owner, you start hiring and then you realize, oh my goodness, I'm not hiring people that have an inclusive mindset. They don't care. They really care about themselves. They don't care about how others are really advancing. They haven't even focused on those efforts before. And that's a problem.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, so that's quite an interesting background. So, what age were you when that little boy said that, and you talked to your mom?
Yeah. How old was I? I was in middle school. So I must have been maybe around 10, 11, or 12. I forget what age,
That
but it
was
was,
a pivotal point for you, right?
yeah,
So you could have went different directions. You could have went, I'm crying, I'm crying, I'm crying. I'm gonna not put myself in that environment again, or I'm gonna react a different way, or I'm gonna become a victim and stay a victim. Or you can do what your mom said. I created you to create change in the world, and you're going to stand up, and that's going to be your path. That's going to be your mission, your vision going forward.
yeah. But it's
Or
not,
you're
it's
going to
also,
start taking a whole new path and beat everybody up.
I could have done that, right? That probably would have felt even better. But no, I think
Oh, in the short term, Netta, in the
in the
short
short
term,
term,
you
yeah,
got to
short term
go,
better. Like,
and your police
I
dad
did that.
has to arrest you.
I released it, right? Um, I think, you mentioned the word victim, and I think it's hard, right? Because there is there's privilege in having a parent that is going to say that to you and support you.
And many would
We
never
also
say
have to
that.
realize the environment that I was in. I was in a neighborhood and even in a school that was predominantly white. There was a lot of racism that also existed.
Mhm.
And there was very few, right? Few of people that identified as Black.
Mhm.
So, so when I think about other young people, it may have been very hard, even if their parents had told them that, to take that step. Think about it. When you're in the workplace, and let's say you're being bullied within the workplace, it's hard to speak up for yourself. So can you imagine as a child then going through that and not feeling like you have the support to speak up? So oftentimes, and I hate to even, I wouldn't even use the word victim. I think oftentimes people don't even feel safe enough to say, hey, here's what I'm experiencing because they don't have the support system. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think when I
privilege I
said
in
the
that
word
place.
victim, it was out of context because when I said the word victim, everybody has a choice to make. And they can have a choice to stay in that Tony Robbins calls it and Les Brown calls it that suffering state, right? And they can continue to be in that suffering state where they live in that moment, they're upset, and it affects the rest of their life. or they can make the choice that you did. And you're right. Not everybody has that parent that's going to give them that great advice. Not everybody has that sounding board, that shoulder to cry on, somebody to talk to that's going to give them that sounding board. But there's a choice, no matter what has happened to us, that we can move on and create change, or we can stay stuck. That's the context I'm in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We have the choice, and sometimes you still stay stuck, even when you make that decision.
Well, I
Because
don't
I
think
think,
you're stuck. So you've written a book that we're going to jump into and create a technology.
yeah,
I
right.
don't think
I
you're
want
stuck
I
at all.
want to also be very sensitive to those that are still stuck in situations, because there are many people, right? They make the decision to maybe say, okay, I'm going to address this situation, and maybe there are repercussions because of that, or they
Wow.
no longer have an opportunity or a job, and that then prohibits them from feeding their family. So this is real, this is real life, and that's why I like to
And
always speak.
that's a great point you just brought up, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is true. Now I'm one of those people. I'm a bulldog, so I can, no matter what's happened to me, and I've had quite the trouble past,
Yeah.
and quite big things have happened, and all people have. A lot
Yep.
of people have,
Yep.
regardless of anything. A lot of people have, but you just made a huge point there. What does somebody do? Like, who can they reach out to? Can they reach out to you, your organization? What does somebody do if they are feeling stuck in their position? If they are feeling, stuck in their career for whatever thing it might be, racism, this, that. What can they do to get unstuck?
Yeah, I think definitely them one surrounding and finding a community of people that they can lean on and speak to, because I think oftentimes because people may not trust those around them to share or receive that advice, they feel stuck. They still feel in that position, right? So
And they
find
could be embarrassed for whatever reason, even though it's no
yeah,
fault of their own whatsoever. Or they
right.
might not just really have somebody they can talk. A lot of people feel so lonely. They're like, I don't even have somebody to talk to.
Right, right. And that's why I say find a community of people, right? Like seek that as well. There are so many diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioners out there, career coaches out there as well that provide this guidance. Invest in yourself. I tell people invest in yourself all the time. Someone that you can call like anytime and say, hey, I'm having this situation. Can you guide me as to how I actually go about navigating this? So those are, a couple things that can be
Have
done.
you built a community that people can reach
Always.
out to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Always. If folks want to reach out to me as well, feel free to. You
What's it?
can head,
Okay.
you can
Yeah,
head to
let's tell them that real quick. What do they reach out?
metajenkins.com. Yep.
Okay, netatickets.com. And you have a community that can offer support.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Let's dive into your book. I've got some questions coming up, but let's ask one question. How can we ensure that the diverse perspectives are represented and valued in decision making processes within the organization?
Yeah. So that's a great question, and thank you, Kim, for posing that. I would say, a lot of people ask me, "Well, I want to practice allyship, Netta. What do I do?" Right? And so, if you're working with folks on your team or cross functionally that um, are really adding value and contributing, amplify their voices when they're not in the room. Share that with their manager, right? Share that with the senior leader. Send an email. Hey, I've been working with this person on this particular project. I really would recommend considering their voice on this project or in this decision making process. They're really great at what they do. Oftentimes, it's like if I talk about you and all the work that you've done, Michelle, and I amplify it with someone else, they're going to want to find out, well, who is Michelle? Right? What does Michelle do? Right? The same for me. Like if you talk about me, people can want to know. And so I typically say on an individual level, amplify. If we do more of amplifying each other's voices within workplaces, we'll see more people a part of the decision making process as well.
Yeah, and I think those are all great points. And I've always said that it's always better when somebody else sells you than when you sell yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let's get into your book. The title again?
The inclusive organization.
Give us a synopsis of the book.
Yeah. So the book is really, it's a practical book. I wanted for folks to say, okay, I'm reading this chapter and I can now apply it to the work that I do. After each chapter, there's a worksheet so people can work through all of the exercises that I've provided. There's a lot to the books. It'll be very hard to explain everything, right? But one of the things that I really like to focus on is the framework as a DEI practitioner within the workplace, within organizations. And I follow the 3 Ps. Within organizations, we should all be focusing on people. So, how do we attract? How do we retain talent? A part of that comes with employee resource groups, right? Who's a part of the employee resource groups? How are employee resource group members advancing within their careers? Do they have sponsorship, executive sponsorship that is amplifying the work that they do? How does it contribute to their promotions, right? So, what are some of those benefits as well? Then I like to look at practice. So, practice is the policies within an organization. Is there a reimbursement policy? What does that look like? It's very interesting because a lot of organizations will say, hey, we'll reimburse you. But what if that individual doesn't have the funds? That's happened to me before, right? I didn't have the funds. And I'm like, oh crap, but I'm too embarrassed to say I don't have the funds.
Mhm.
But I'm going to have to, they'll reimburse me, but I don't have the funds to put it up. So, how do we start thinking about reimbursement policies a little bit different for folks that may not have the income at that moment, right? We don't know experiences. There are people that are, trans, that they identify as transgender, right? What are some of those policies? There are a lot of caregivers. What are those policies, right? What are some of those benefits? So that's the practice layer, really taking a holistic overview of policies and how they impact employees within organizations, no matter the size. And then the last piece is product. So, with product, how are we measuring the impact of our inclusive efforts within an organization? A lot of organizations, what they do is they will survey. People are tired of the surveys over and over. You're like, yeah, check, check, check. I'm great. Meanwhile, you're pissed.
Well, I don't even do them anymore.
You don't even do them. Forget about it, right?
Unless you're going to give me a significant discount on something.
Exactly. It's like, oh, $1,000. Yes, I'm doing great, right? So it's like, is that information even as accurate? That is where I say product is so important. Organizations need to identify, okay, are we utilizing a product that measures the diversity, equity, and inclusive efforts of every single employee's impact? And that's where Aradai's platform really comes into play. A lot of organizations already are early adopters, excited about this platform because it's a gamified tool. So not only can organizations now measure the impact of their efforts of every single employee, but employees are having fun with it while they're driving impact. So those are kind of the 3 pillars that I focus on, but there's so many different chapters within the book. It's fun. It's like my personality. Definitely the book is my personality. There's some serious components, but then it's funny. You'll be laughing at like, wait, hold on. I was just reading something serious just now. So I really wanted to kind of put some life into the book, and I hope folks run out and get it.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. I'm going to tell my team to go get it. And you probably should go get a copy of Exit Rich.
Yes, you already know. I will.
But what's funny is that you said the 3 Ps, so I have the 6 Ps.
Oh, okay.
So I have people. So you mentioned people.
Mhm.
I have people because without people, you have no business. You have a glorified job that you go to work at every day. And then you mentioned practice. We don't have practice, but you mentioned product.
Mhm.
Yeah, I found the way that you mentioned product to be very interesting.
Mhm.
When we talk about product and Exit Rich, we're talking about what's that product, what's that service, what's that industry
Mhm.
that you're in, because is it still relevant or is it antiquated? Because a lot of times business owners are stuck
Yeah.
in an antiquated product or an antiquated industry that's dying, not thriving, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's kind of like go back and look at the typewriter. Is that still thriving? And so I like I like the product. What are some products that you would recommend for companies to adopt?
I would have to say Aerodye. Aerodye is an exceptional
And this
product.
is just not a commercial, y'all.
It's not. Maybe we need to capture this moment as a commercial. Go to Aerodye. No, seriously, Aerodye platform is an exceptional platform that, again, it's this gamified tool, and it really allows for organizations to see their accurate demographic data, pull reports. Um, Also, organizations
That from their employees or also from their clients and vendors?
so for their employees specifically, but we are rolling out different features as well. So down the line, organizations will see vendors and all the others as well.
So who's your ideal client for this, for
Yeah.
Aerodye?
Yeah. So really any organization, mid-size to a large enterprise, that has employees, you have to have employees. And
Oh, you can't just do it with a party of one, huh?
it may not work with a party of one, although if you want to implement it now, that's forward thinking and proactive. I root that person on or that organization on, but want to have some employees within the organization, and really an organization that is saying, hey, we want to make sure that we have a psychologically safe, inclusive environment for people to advance. And we also want to make sure that we're able to see the results of our inclusive efforts. And so Aerodye measures the impact of that. It's exciting for every single employee within the organization as well to utilize the application. And it also then shows demographic data. And it's a safe space for people to self-identify as well.
And so what's the minimum employee somebody should have if they're going to sign up for Aerodye?
Yeah. I would say at least 10 employees or more. 10 is a great number to start off with, because that's an organization that's being proactive and saying, hey, we want to start implementing DEI efforts early on that are going to democratize and create inclusive environment from the beginning.
Okay. So how will it impact their company from a efficiency standpoint, a growth standpoint, productivity standpoint, profitability standpoint, being really being a value company? How will it impact?
Yeah, well, you named it. It'll definitely increase productivity. I think you need to be a part of this commercial as well. But
Part of God, we didn't really talk about this before the show. We talked about how both of our cars were stolen.
I know
Hers in Boston and mine in New Orleans. So
there's some synergy.
you did not coach me here.
We're twinning a little bit. Definitely increased productivity, increased performance for employees as well. Profitability, absolutely, hands down. Increase of representation within an organization, retention. So, I tested this prototype within an organization for 2 years, and the impact was substantial, which is why we said, okay, we have to bring it to market for other organizations to see how transformational it can be. So we're really excited about it.
I love it. So anybody who's interested in that, reach out to Netta, and she'll go over the details with you on that. And probably every company should get on board. So I'm going to kind of take a different turn here and ask your opinion. Not to put you on the spot, but there's been a lot of chatter and a lot of articles, a lot of publicity on Disney World right now. And some people think they're going too far with inclusion and, the characters of Disney. And, what do you think?
Ooh.
Your preface.
Do we have 3 hours or no?
You got about 15 minutes left.
Okay.
20 minutes
Wow. I would say to those people that are saying it's going too far, there is a level of inherent racism that exists then. For a very long time, there has not been representation within characters on TV, right?
I was talking mostly transgender right
now.
now.
Transgender. Correct? Okay.
Yeah, mostly transgender with Disney World.
Yeah, I think even
Because there's been African American characters and different types of characters for decades now. So they're
well,
talking
not
mostly
really for decades.
transgender.
Hasn't been
Okay, maybe not
but
decades, but as long as my 12-year-old daughter's been watching.
yeah. Yeah, I haven't. I honestly, even when I was younger, I did not see much representation. But I will say that um, for transgender representation, I mean, it's representation, right? There are people that are transgender even from a young age. There are folks that have their children identifying that way. And I think it is important for them to see that representation. It's up to a parent to say, hey, I want my child to watch this or not, right? There's parental control. And if a parent does not want their child to see that, but I do think that it's important to have that representation because within our society there is representation in that way.
Yeah, they're talking about transforming some of the characters in a transgender, and that's where a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you're going too far." I don't really have a dog. I mean, well, we all have a voice, and we all should have an opinion, and we all should, But it's just to me interesting, so I wanted to get your take on that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think again, I think representation is critical, right? And so I think if we have representation of that within our society and young children, we see it, young children are identifying that way, then we should be seeing that as well. It should be implemented, right? And I think they're doing it for representation purposes. And also when we start seeing things like that come up, younger people are typically the ones that are saying, "Hey, but I don't see me," right? So I think it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are saying, "Look, this is Disney World. This is, you know, tradition. This is family friendly, etc."
But families are
Um,
changing, right?
Families are changing, and you did make a good point. It's a point that's been made over and over again that if you don't like it, change the channel. If you don't like it, don't go to Disney World. I'm not going to Disney World anymore because they don't have hand sanitizers outside of every ride
Yeah,
like Universal does.
yeah, that's not good.
And I'm like, you know what? You guys are making all this money and you can't keep us safe
Yeah,
and
that's
have
not
hand
good.
sanitizers. Because I just came back from Disney. I just came back from Universal. And, oh my gosh, I think Disney needs a rehaul when it comes to organization. It's how traffic flows in and out of there.
Yeah,
Like have one lane for the wheelchairs and the strollers and because you put them all together and everybody gets taken.
yeah, it was intense when
I literally had. I mean, it's ridiculous. Have one lanes, right? Have one lane for the strollers and the wheelchairs and the scooters, and have one lane for the pedestrians, and have one way going this way, one way going this way. It's just everybody ends up, especially after a show, after the parade. It's a mess. I was ran over by four wheelchairs, two scooters, and a woman fell on top of
oh
me
no.
because she was ran over by a wheelchair. And it's not like people or strollers. It's not like people are trying to do it on purpose. They're just trying to get out. It's so congested. So I think Disney,
Oh
all in all, needs a rehaul. All in all, needs a rehaul.
wow.
So Kim has another question. Do you see that question?
Yeah, are you working on a project? Yes, I am. I'm working on
Mark Moore.
yeah,
Mark Moore.
so Mark Lore is the owner of an NBA team, Minnesota Timberwolves, and was the former CEO of Walmart as well. But he is building a brand new city. Brand new city in America has not been built in over 100 years. And this brand new city is called Tolosa. So I'm one of the advisors on the project. Um, I love what they're doing. I see the impact and the benefits of that. I'm excited for that to um, come out and be developed. So we're working on it.
So where's the city going to be built?
So the city should be built by 2025 or 2030. So something in that realm. But we're kind of we're working on policies and really kind of thinking through around how we make sure we attract a diverse group of people and ensuring that it's equitable for all and inclusive. There are some,
Where's it going to be located?
so they're still figuring that out. It'll probably be somewhere out west. but they're still working on those details.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. How many people? How many people will that house?
Gosh, I think they want to bring in the first 50,000, and I have to look back at the date, but I think it's between 2025 or 2030.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Y'all should work on a movie at the same time. All right. So Natalie, you've been an amazing guest. What give us some tips for our businesses that can really, we all need to do a better job, right? All of us as individuals, all of us as business owners, all of us as employees, independent contractors, everybody needs to do a better job. But give my listeners who are mostly business owners or startups, some tips
Yeah.
of how we can do a better job.
Yeah. So like you said, a lot of the people that tune in are business owners, are, from small startups. I think talent it's important that we get that right. Who you bring into your organization. And oftentimes I tell leaders and business owners, you want to understand what are some inclusive practices that particular talent implemented within a former organization, right? How did that impact people on their team? You want to make sure that leaders that you bring into your organization are equipping people with the resources and the tools to advance. That they too are also asking questions around, hey, what are some inclusive measures, no matter what role you're in or what level you're in. We really want to know and understand how have people been impactful towards each other within an organization. What are some things that they've done on their own? I think the other piece is, right now there's a lot of talk about remote working in an office, really giving employees the option to select, right? We all have different experiences. Some people are caregivers, some people are single parents. There's so many different situations. So allowing that individual to say, I'd like to work from home. And of course, making sure that they get their work done because that's critical. But if they can do it and be impactful, let's make that happen. If they select hybrid and you do have office space, let's make that happen. So giving people the autonomy, I think, is really, really important. And I think I like to do things in threes. So let me think of a last one.
Yeah, because you just said give me 3 tips. This time I said give me because I do things in threes
I
too.
do, yeah.
Everything happens in threes.
Yeah. And I would say the last thing too is, you know, as business owners, and I know it all too well, sometimes we get so tied doing everything because you become the marketing person, the CFO, you're just doing everything, the marketing person, right? And we forget that, hey, you have maybe some contractors or people that are full time that are reporting to you, and you haven't really taken the time to learn about them, to understand, okay, why are they working here? What are they ignited by? What's the purpose? How can we make sure that we retain them? Those are
Mhm.
questions that we should really be positioning early on to ourselves and really checking off like, hey, have I actually built a relationship with this individual? Because when you think about it, when you have a small organization, you have the ability to do that. You can
Mhm.
talk to a few of the people around you and understand, okay, what are they really looking for? Why do they want to grow? And that will keep you on your toes to understand, okay, well, this is how I retain these people. I've built a relationship and we've garnered a level of trust and respect. So those are my three.
Yeah, Jeff Hoffman was very good at that. Founder of the airport kiosk and founder of Priceline, and I was about to say Constant Contact, but that was Alex Stern. Anyway, they all been on my shows. I've known Jeff Hoffman for years,
Yeah.
but his big thing when he interviewed, no matter how big his organization was, he did interviews because he wanted to find out what makes people tick.
Uh-huh.
And it's not always about the money.
No.
Usually when you ask employees what's the top five, money is usually 4 or 5, sometimes not even in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually culture is up there,
Yeah.
um, ability to grow within the company. Learning is always in the top.
Mm-hmm.
and money's always in the bottom. But what he did, an extra step, and I think everybody should kind of pay attention because we're doing this as well. But really finding out what is that employee trying to do. When Jeff Hoffman did this, he found out that this one employee, they lived in a tent their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Their mom and dad never had a home.
Mm-hmm.
So his whole goal, he was living in an apartment. His whole goal was to get his mom and dad a home.
Yep.
So the whole team knew what his goal was and what his struggles was.
Mm-hmm.
So they all came together and bought this gentleman a home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that can be for any race, right?
It could be for any human. Yeah, absolutely.
Any human, and I don't mean race. I mean any human, right? Any human.
Mm-hmm.
And so this other guy, his mom was had cancer and didn't have the money or insurance radiation. So they all pulled together money and paid for radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really important to get to know people on a much, much deeper level and not just have the employer involved or the CEO or, CFO, but really have the whole team
Mm-hmm.
engaged.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a team helping a team is what really makes big things
Yeah.
happen for not only the company, but especially for the individuals.
Yeah.
Because, like Bob Proctor always said, your revenue is not dependent upon your company. It is the vehicle
Mm-hmm.
in which you get paid, but it is not, it's a source in which you get paid, but it is not. You're not, what you want to make does not come from your company.
Mm-hmm.
It's the source. It's up to you how much money you want to make and the habits that you develop.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, any other last minute tips, or what should a business owner? Let's say a business owner's like, "Oh my God, I didn't think about any of this stuff."
What did you say?
And I would say a lot of them are at that place.
Yeah.
So, number one, what should I do? Probably contact you, right?
Yeah. Let's definitely. I'm
And
always
get the book.
always up to support. You can head to nettajenkins.com if you're interested in learning a little bit more about diversity, equity, and inclusion within your organization, how to institute that. If you're interested in implementing or testing out this free trial of the AeroDye platform, please reach out and you can head to aerodye.com. That's AERODEI.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I have over 300,000 LinkedIn followers, but
Oh, now you're bragging.
yeah, and I have to brag. But let me say this, and this is the commercial. If you connect with me and you put that you listened while I was on Exit Rich, then I will accept you, and we will definitely connect.
I mean, I'm saying that as because that's quite an accomplishment to get 300,000 followers. And you did a big TED Talk, so everybody should probably go listen to your TED Talk too as well.
Yeah.
And so, what can we do to help you in your mission?
Yeah, I think, definitely amplifying the book. The Inclusive Organization will help many organizations.
So everybody needs to go get the book right now.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Everybody needs to go get the book right now.
Yeah.
Is there any questions from any of our listeners? Any more questions, comments, anything? And I'm hoping this is being shared to your team too, to your LinkedIn page, Netta,
Mm-hmm.
as well. Okay. So everybody run out and get the book. Don't talk to me if you didn't. Get in contact with Netta. Netta, you are a fabulous guest. I've learned a lot here today.
Thank you.
And I don't always say that on every podcast,
Okay.
but I learned a lot here today. So,
Yeah.
I think everybody can learn something new every day. And I know my listeners got a tremendous amount of value out of this episode. So thank you so much. And thank you to my listeners for all listening and sharing, because I know you're going to share to your network. You're going to share to your coworkers. You're going to share, to your friends and family. Get the message out. We all need to make this world a better place. I think Netta's on the right track. What's next for you, Netta? Other than working with Mark Laura, creating your own city.
I think, really just focusing on AeroDye, ensuring that if I can get that in every single organization, they will truly see true transformation. So everyone that's listening, definitely reach out. Would love to offer free trials because
She's saying free, y'all. Free. So
Free
everybody
trials.
should be chiming in right now.
Only if you're toning in right now.
Yeah, right now. I think we're going to go get a free trial.
Okay.
And we're going to buy the book.
Awesome.
And yeah, and everybody still go buy Exit Rich too, but buy Nita's book first.
Yep.
All right. So thanks again to Netta for being such an amazing guest and really educating us. And thank you to all of our listeners and for tuning in every Wednesday. We'll have another new episode next Wednesday. Again, make sure you share this with everybody and don't forget to subscribe to Exit Rich Podcast. Thank you again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.